Hey, what's going on? This is Andy Minio. This is week 6 of Chisel season. We've been going through the book Radical by David Platt, and this week was actually on money. The name of the chapter was How Much Is Enough? As we were reading this week, one part of the chapter that really caught us was a conversation that David Platt spoke about that he had with one of the members of his church who was actually a rather wealthy man in his church. And so I want to read this section for you. The man comes to David Platt and he says, you know, you've been telling us to be generous with our funds. You've been telling us that God has given us our funds in order that we could better bless other people. So he's entrusted us with much so we could give much. And he says, you know what, I thought that what you were saying was kind of crazy, but then I considered this. And he reads, for the next few minutes, he, being the guy who came to David Platt, described how he was selling his large house and had decided to give away many of his other possessions. He talked about the needs he wanted to invest his resources in for the glory of Christ. Then he looked at me through his tears in his eyes and said, I wonder at some points if I'm being irresponsible or unwise. But then I realized there is never going to come a day when I stand before God and he looks at me and says, I wish you would have kept more for yourself. I'm confident that God will take care of me. That part for us, when we read that as a group this morning, we were all just kind of like, oh man, this is so true. The thing that gives us hope in this life now is when we reflect on what's to come. So when we reflect on what's to come in eternity with God, it makes us change the way that we think about how we are radically generous and radically loving now, because we know that you know, what lies ahead is greater. And so that was just a challenge for us to all ask ourselves, how are we spending our money? How are we stewarding what God has entrusted us with? And how can we you know, be more intentional about the way that we invest what God has given us? So it was a really big reality check for us, because none of us really ever considered ourselves as being rich, but in light of the whole world, you know, comparatively speaking, we are some of the most affluent and rich people on the planet, in the top 15 percentile. And so it just made us really more aware of what's going on globally, and made us want to be better stewards with our funds. So I hope that y'all get challenged this week to examine how you're using your funds, and realizing that not just 10% of it belongs to Jesus, but all of it, and seeing ways and finding ways that you can best invest in order to advance the gospel and make Jesus known in the world. So visit us at chiselseason.blogspot.com. Let us know your thoughts on this week's chapter, How Much Is Enough, and we'll see you guys next week. Peace.